Welcome to Season 2 of Build and Grow, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to new models in these times, YourStory is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversations, insights, and observations from some of the newest trendsetters in business and stalwarts of the ecosystem. Tune in to power your next phase of growth and business continuity.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Build and Grow Money Matters Season 2. I'm Vishal Krishna, your business editor, and it's my pleasure to have Mukul Rustagi, the co-founder and CEO of Classplus, joining me today. Mukul co-founded Classplus in 2018 to help digitize the after-school coaching industry and to make them relevant in today's online age. The edtech company operates a mobile-first software as a service platform for private coaching centers. It helps these centers take their businesses online and streamline their business functions, including communication, assessments, distribution, payments, and content. Within 15 months of its launch, it has constructed a base of more than 1,200 coaching centers across more than 1,000 plus Indian cities. As an alumnus of IIT Roorkee, Mukul started his career as an equity research analyst and later a derivatives analyst before taking over the tech space with Storm, and he has really done extremely well. Classplus has also raised a lot of money. We'll be talking about that. Welcome, Mukul. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for the kind introduction. Love to be a part of this.
Mukul, I wanted to talk to you about this, and we've all heard so much about you. Yeah, how did this idea come about? And you had positioned yourself in such a way because it's a crowded market, right? And how do you acquire and grow your customer base in this crowded market?
Yeah. So I think the step to venture out in this market was not something that we had extremely planned. It came out of a lot of iterations. Bhaswat and I, this is our third startup together. We met in school days. Before this also, I think we used to run another edtech firm, tried multiple pivots over there, failed at almost every one of them. And then ultimately we realized that as a country, we place enormous amount of trust in our teachers around us, and whether they're offline, whether they're online, whether they're in our city or their other city, but everyone has a set of teachers who they want to study from, right? And we thought that in the advanced world of today and tomorrow, when technology will play a huge role in almost running every business operations, enabling these educators to set up their online identities, take their business out of their localities, build and give their students a new age digital learning experience. I think we thought that it's the ultimate nirvana we can get. And with that simplistic thought, actually, we started Classplus. This was 2018. And from there on, it's been a journey of a lifetime.
It has been, and last year was a revelatory year for us because one is the pandemic by itself, which changed consumer habits, right? It brought about a massive opportunity for head tech, and that opportunity was in the number of consumers that went digital, right? And it was there for the taking for you to get these centers to go digital. How did you leverage this opportunity for such massive growth?
I think the one good thing that helped us use the opportunity, and as a founder, no founder is ever content on utilizing the tailwinds because there's so much more that could always be done. But I think we were very ripe and well positioned to use the opportunity really well, and not just for ourselves, but the fundamental reason why we spent sleepless nights, the entire team of Classplus, was not because we were only and only focused on growing ourselves during the pandemic. We realized that we had a huge social responsibility to take care. We realized that like students love to be around educators, and they essentially visit their offline classes every now and then. And we realized that if that contact is gone, there's a huge risk of teachers losing their livelihoods. There's a huge risk of students losing an year of curriculum, and there's a huge break that can possibly come up. And so the reason to actually put the pedal on was to do good for what the educational society requires, and which was to enable and ensure that the continual touch remains between the educators and their students. And I think that was the single end motto. Classplus's growth was, if I can say that, it was a side product of the overall large impact that we were trying to drive in the society and ensure that teachers continue to run their classes and their businesses.
And the impact is phenomenal. You had 50,000 teachers, right? 50,000 plus, 70 lakh plus students. Like we mentioned earlier, 1,100 cities, right? That's a massive opportunity. But from that massive opportunity come the learnings. What are the learnings of the last 12 months for you?
I think many, in fact, some of these learnings were reinforced, some of these was first time. As a founder and the complete team, we realized that pinpoint focus is very, very underrated in what we do. Like, uh, like the moment you start growing, there are huge temptations to do everything around yourselves and mutate into every single version of yourself that can possibly take place. But we realized that the segment of coaching institutes really needs us. The segment of independent educators really need us. And throughout the year, we actually focused on not just solving one single problem, and which was to enable these educators in the today's smartphone age to ensure that their businesses and their teaching brands continue to shine offline and online. And I think that was one big learning. We also realized that as a product and this company grows in, not just there's so much more value add that good products do to the society as a whole. And I think it's both a state of power as well as responsibility. So we realize that we have to be flawless because all the educational businesses are running on the platform, right? So
Yes,
some of those.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you also have a big user base from 1,100 Indian cities, right? You know, previously in 2018 or 19, you had only 50 cities. That's a massive, massive jump, right? More than 100 times. I mean, close to what we would say, what, 20 time growth? Sorry, 20 time growth, would you say? What would you tell us about your user base? Where does it come from? And how do these cities and towns behave? From that context, how is your strategy placed?
Yes, I think the beautiful thing about education in India is that education is the single most important thing for any family living in any part of this country, right? And the second thing is that the respect for offline teachers or local educators is super high in any state, any district speaking any language. I think we just took this across the country. We had spent 2 years mastering this in few geographies, iterated a lot to get a supreme amount of product market fit, delayed our growth plans by a couple of quarters just because we wanted to be like super sure that we serve the best customer experiences to people. But I think geographies don't really play a very huge role in this. And although today 70-75% of our customer base and student base obviously comes from tier 2 cities, which is obviously true because in tier 2 cities control that amount of population and demography and area and geography, everything. So it's completely pan India today. And the single most reason is because education is a universal priority for every family living in India.
When you spoke about the challenges, Mukul, what is important for the edtech ecosystem is about the sustainability. You're a person who brings in a lot of empathy. There are different stakeholders. So,
Yeah.
how can digital businesses scale sustainably via intuitive user onboarding and engagement?
I think being digital is probably one of the biggest levers at any business, whether it's an SMB or an enterprise or a startup or any corporate. I think being digital has a huge as a huge lever is very important in getting to sustainability. And because, like for example, if you look at offline classes, there's a huge capex involved, right? And in the pandemic, that wasn't even allowed. So I think that's one of the key aspects that we focused on. Secondly, as a product also, if we have to grow beyond boundaries and we have to grow at a very rapid pace, I think ensuring a great customer experience, like empathy is again highly underrated in the world. But at Classplus, we have something called GPs, which are the greatness principles, highly inspired from Amazon's LPs. And empathy is our one GP number one. And if we are empathetic towards our customers, we had to devise a way on how we can touch base with them, how we can onboard them, how we can educate them during the times when physical contact was not out there. So I think digital onboarding is something that is supremely necessary for any sort of business. And the faster they realize it, the faster it's better for them, right?
I agree with you. And in that case, right, for onboarding at great convenience and making sure that everyone's happy, the technologies play a major role. What are some of the key technologies that you're leveraging for scale and growth?
I think I have a very interesting take at this. We generally don't look at what technologies do we follow, whether it's the latest trend or whether it's an old age technology. It doesn't really matter to us. technology without a great customer experience is just a product, and just a product never works out, right? So I think more than what language do we use, what stacks do we use, we look at the problem statements that we are trying to solve, and that's my message to all the engineers out also. That essentially, when you look at something like a Classplus, the same platform is going to be used by a school-going student, let's say 12 to 15 years of age, and it's also going to be used by a, let's say, an extremely old teacher, typically let's say 50, 60 years of age, who's been in the industry for so long. It's probably his first time using internet as a productivity tool, and all the ages between that is, again, now how do you design a product for that? How do you design language for that? How do you design onboarding for that? How do you design for that? And I think those are the places where I would say technology has a huge contribution, and that's why building and serving something like this is extremely challenging. And that's why we don't look Classplus from the point of view of a stack to be used or a language to be used, because at the end of the day, that is just syntax. What really is that how can technology actually go out and help consumers by the product choices that they take.
That's very well said. I think engineers watching this would benefit from the fact that you should be passionate and you should be solving a problem and have the foundation strong. Doesn't matter whether you got Java or Python or PHP. You'd agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Here's another question for you that's very important. I think the audience, from your story would love it. In September last year, raised a fresh round of funding from Alpha Wave, Bloom, and RTP. What are the focus areas that you're looking at in order to utilize this cash flow? I'm sure a large part of that is going into engineering too.
Yeah, it is actually, we've scaled almost all our verticals non-linearly over the last year. That being said, frugality is another of our GPs, and raising a lot of capital does not mean that we start splurging. I think we want to remain in that. I won't say conservative, but we want to obviously always forge a sustainable path to us, and we're only going to spend where it's necessary. When you talk about fundraise, we did 3 fundraisers in the last 12 to 15 months, and almost all the three of them were derived from an innate aspiration to partner with great partners. And capital is supremely important. Yes, it was important, but equally important was the fact that we were able to join hands with people and partners who have had great operating experiences. They've seen legendary companies being built in front of them. They bring so much network, which is actually invaluable if I try to put a number to it. And the thrill of working with them, and when I say working with them, sharing good and bad every single day out there, and still having that trust that they understand what we are trying to do and they believe in us. I think that's an unparalleled field after all. And that is where we say that partners over capital any day is the motto of fundraise at Classplus. Like, we'll never, ever raise money from people who we don't think relate to the gravity of the problem, who don't understand the pain of what an independent educator actually goes out through there. So yeah, partners over capital. Like, I'm a total people's person. Classplus is a total people's company, and I think people over everything else is what our ideology is.
That's an interesting idea, because a lot of people should come work with a startup like yours that's in a high growth phase, solving a real India problem. On that note, I want to talk about your strategy. Very interesting to hear about what's going to happen in the next 2 years, especially with consumer behavior changing on the B2B and B2C front, right? We've all grown to accept the digital revolution that's happening thanks to COVID. So what do the next 18 to 24 months look like for Classplus?
I think I'll answer this from the perspective of an industry as per se. Like, if you look at pre-COVID, everyone knew that there was a lot of latent heat in how edtech was going to shape up. Practically, the way our classrooms were structured, the way communication between students and teachers was structured, has not changed in the last 5 or 6 decades. And it was definitely going to change at some point of time. Now, all the latent heat burst through COVID, and what it actually did is that it accelerated the user behaviors and the consumer patterns by at least, let's say, 2 through 3 years. It was it was probably the biggest customer education campaign that could have actually taken place. So I think from an industry point of view, still there are hundreds of millions of students in India who are not able to take tutoring, despite living in a country which is super competitive, and selection rates in exams, jobs, everywhere is extremely low. But they're not able to take the right set of tutoring because of either there's a barrier to cost or there's a barrier of access. And those barriers are essentially technology in any form. Look at any edtech company in the world. It's not just about Classplus. every company or every product would be solving one of these two. And this board's great for the entire segment as such, because education now becomes more accessible, more affordable, and technology is a great leveler for anybody and everybody who wants to learn. And the great thing is that if you look at today's education, like school tuitions or after school is not just what education is. Anybody can learn anything on the internet today, and that is what something that we are going to see over the next few years in this part of the world too.
Okay. This is something that it would interest you. After all, running a startup is like, it's like sailing a ship. It requires a lot of experience. Based on whatever has happened with you over the last 2 years, and based on the last 1 year, things are now just coming back to normal. What is the one piece of advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
That's actually a hard one. Still young into this, but many advices actually, many learnings actually, not just advices. I've spoken about focus as being one of the key points if somebody really wants to do. It's a great enabler. Focus is a great enabler. Empathy is like super underappreciated. Um, uh, Also to realize that India type problems can only be solved by an India type solution. It's impossible to try and take inspiration from somebody and like absolutely pasting that. Um, the consumer behaviors across different demographies in India, it's completely different. Like look at the like the prime example would be, look at the home screen of a smartphone of a tier 1 guy versus a smartphone home screen of a tier 3 guy, and you'll realize that they're on the same thread of technology, but they would be using the platform for many different unique purposes. And I think the more we stay closer to the ground, the better it is for everybody. And yeah, those are like 3 or 4 learnings that we've had. And fourth, I think one more thing, uh, essentially having a great team with a great mission is probably as critical as anything. I think it's probably more critical than anything. And to whatever we have achieved at ClassPlus, I think we owe a chunk majority to all the people who have ever helped us, whether for a short duration, long duration, at odd hours or Sundays or whatever it is. But the team's efforts are entirely what takes anybody forward. So I think a huge shout out for my team, and I think that's what we've learned over the last 2-3 years.
Mukul, that's some fascinating insight and advice. Since this topic is about money, what is your financial ideology? What is the financial ideology that you live by? And how do you work towards growing your money? It can be companies or yours personally.
So I think I'm a very old-fashioned, boring person in that sense. I still abide by that same old ideology that every penny saved is a penny earned, and managing cash flows in life is supremely important, whether it's personal, whether it's professional. And then if you top that up with frugality, and frugality is not just around saving. Frugality is how do you find the best ROI in every use cases. So I think frugality and savings is one of the financial pieces that I would love to run personal life as well as Classplus on, and they're always at the center of whatever decision we take. But that also, but just to add on to that, uh, if you find an opportunity which is like worth chasing, being brave and double clicking on this and doubling down on that should never be a hesitation. Like it's fine to pick up one battle out of 10 battles to fight, but if you've decided what battle to fight, planting enough resources and going supremely overboard is also a great technique which we try to follow while taking financial decisions. As I say, offense is probably one of the best defenses also.
That's really well said. I think if you want to follow your passion, stick to it, stay true to it for a while, and things work out. Like you mentioned earlier, they pivoted several times and they had 3 startups before Classplus took off. So that is very interesting. And, I want to ask you one final question. Banks are central to India's growth. And what are your expectations from banks when it comes to the startup community?
I think we've recently seen a huge influx of banks being partners to the startup companies, and obviously that's also because a lot of startups are managing huge amounts of cash, and banks have a huge amount of operating experience, right from what financial decisions to take, how to leverage the money better, how to safeguard the money better, how to generate the best buck out of it. I think, and we have also been fortunate enough to work with few banks in our journey. And I think the expectation is just to learn from their operating experience and their financial experiences and just keep building on it. Like every edtech company, like learning should be at the core of the life. So I think that's what we look forward to when we work with them.
That's really very well said, Mukul. You know, he's a co-founder of Classplus. Go check them out, guys. Thank you very much, Mukul, for being on the show. We'll see you soon.
Totally our pleasure, and trust everyone's well and healthy and safe around you. Take care.